Here's where we're headed. Multi-century, multi-millennium visioning. Well, that's so hard to say. So let's start with something easier. Multi-decade. All right, but then multi-century. Visioning. Not predicting, not forecasting, but visioning, imagining, dreaming, hoping, wishing, but far out, like way far out. Like talks about in the Native American tradition, 7 generations. Now, 7 generations in indigenous culture, let's say, what's that, about 15 years? 13, 14, 15 years, 15 times 7, 105. So at least 7 generations. That's what I'd like you to start to do now. And think about what you want for your grandchildren's grandchildren. Yeah. And then go out, multi-millennium. A 1,000 years from now, what do you want? 2,000 years from now, what do you want? I mentioned briefly that this is the work that I got to do last week in Nairobi for a group of people looking to the future of microcredit. Microcredit is a very new movement. It's something that got popularized by a man named Muhammad Yunus through the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. He was an economics professor, and he would walk to his class at the university in Dhaka, and he would pass by very poor people who were eking out a living. And he would talk to them because he felt like he was a professor of economics, and he should have something about economics be practical. So he'd talk to these very poor people and say, well, what's happening with you and money? And the biggest problem they had is the money changers, the loan sharks. That's what we call them here. The people that loan the money for extraordinarily high interest. So he asked, well, how much money do you need? And he talked to about several women, and total, they needed $27. And their life would change. And there were several of them. So he reached into his pocket, not very rich himself, but he had 27 extra dollars, and he loaned it to them with the condition that they repay it, and that he would assist them to repay it by helping them think about their business. Well, they all repaid it. So he started loaning to more and more people. And by the time that I had met him in 1995, he was extraordinarily successful, known around the world because he'd reached 2 million people. And a man that I had been coaching at that time for several years decided that what he wanted to do was to help Muhammad Yunus take this concept and popularize it around the world. And they set a goal that within 10 years they'd reach 100 million people. Well, from 2 million to 100 million, that's a long ways. And a lot of people criticized them and argued with Yunus. They said, and Sam De La Harris is the man that helped him do this. They said, this is impractical. They said, you're never going to get to 100 million by 2005. It's going to take you at least till 2007. And of course, they celebrated that because who cares? if it's 2005 or 2007. But the fact is, by 2007, they did it. They hit over 100 million people who had access worldwide to credit and other microfinancial services like savings and insurance that they never had before. And then they set another goal to be able to take at least 100 million people and their families, which reaches 500 million, out of poverty by 2012. And that's what's being worked on now. And what I went to Nairobi for was to help them look again, but not just at 20 years or 15 years, but 50 years and 100 years. And that's what I'm here to assist you to do. Now, for some of you, you think, well, it's impractical. We can't look out that far. Well, we can. Jules Verne did it. And Einstein did it. Leonardo da Vinci did it. Leonardo da Vinci conceived of all kinds of things. So he did it. He was just a painter. He wasn't even a visionary. So I'd like you to do it. But I want you to think out centuries into the future, or even millennia. Now, I know it works for millennia too. One time, it's about 8 years ago, at an organization called the State of the World Forum, there were about 80 people gathered, about twice the size of this group, and I interviewed 5 women, 5 very famous women from around the world, and asked them what they saw for 2,000 years into the future. And they did it. And they'd never done it before. And they exercised their vision, and they looked out there. It was Jane Goodall, and she looked at the vision of chimps and animals in general, and what she saw for their future. It was Betty Friedan, and she looked out and said, well, what about women and their future and the role of gender? And it was Dadi Janki, who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris, the huge religious organization in India. And she looked out, and of course, a lot of what she talked about was spiritual. So you'll all have your own bent on 2,000 years from now, or 3,000. Bill and I talk about this a lot, and one of Bill's visions for a few thousand years from now is that we have a lot of manned, personed space colonies so that humanity can survive the inevitable attack of a huge meteorite or explosion of an underground volcano. I mean, it's inevitable. Geologic record demonstrates to us every 30 million years, a huge meteorite will strike and wipe out life on Earth as we know it. It's going to be really difficult to live. You think last winter was bad? That winter would last for years. It's not just true about a meteor strike, it's true of a volcanic eruption. And geologically, we're due for one of those. So, welcome to this afternoon. Multi-visioning, multi-decade, multi-century, multi-millennium visioning. That's where we're headed.